find a brain. No, actually, they're nothing. This happened like a week and a half ago. Still new. Oh, you're not supposed to do this at home. Yeah. They're cutting. Right. Yeah. Might use some. And then this stuff over here.
Hey, Mike, did they put one in here? Did they put it right in?
They no. I know. They said they didn't have one that fit. What happened to year up here?
Lose a bet?
You should see the other guy.
Bridget, are we ready?
Bill, can you hear us?
I'll take that as a no.
Hear us, Bill?
Look at that go.
Look at that up.
Where's that? Okay, I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Naperville Park District Board of Commissioners. Today is Thursday, August 27th, 2020. Time is 6:32. Please rise and pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Bridget, would you take the roll of the commissioners that are present?
President Riley?
Here.
Vice President King?
Here.
Commissioner Carlson? Commissioner Egan? Absent. Commissioner Janner?
Here.
Commissioner McBroom?
Here.
Commissioner Todd? Here. I've been notified that Commissioners Egan and Todd have requested to participate remotely due to COVID health concerns.
Thank you. Matters from the public, do we?
We'll have,
Yeah. Move to allow remote of Commissioners Egan and Todd due to COVID health concerns.
Second. A motion is second. Bridget, call the roll, please. Oh, they don't vote on it? Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay. Family's Memorial Monument Project presentation. I'll turn this over to Eric Schutz.
Yes, thank you very much. Memorial Monument Project. This was a project presentation that was relayed at the Parks and Rec Committee meeting last Friday, and they wanted to share their ideas with you this evening.
Good evening, commissioners, Park District staff, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lou Breeze. I'm past commander of the VFW 3873 here in Naperville. Whoa, how's this? More better? This microphone or your microphone?
That one's good. Is that better?
Oh, okay. Ma'am, is this better? Okay. With me, we have formed a committee of 4 people, and we have 3 of them here in attendance this evening. Mr. Marty Walker, and this young lady here, Jennifer Sloan, select United States Marine. Here in Naperville, her and her husband. And before I steal any of her thunder and her presentation, I'll introduce you to Mrs. Sloan.
Thanks, Lou. I have a little bit of a bump that's impeding my ability to talk into the microphone. A lifelong Naperville resident. I graduated from Naperville North, enlisted in the United States Marine Corps about 10 years ago, and I've served since, currently in the reserve. My current rank as captain, as Mr. Breeze mentioned, along with Jan Beinfein. She is a Gold Star family member. Her brother was killed in Vietnam. He was a Green Beret. Lou Breeze is a Vietnam veteran himself, 2 combat tours in Vietnam. And then Marty Walker, an ardent supporter of veterans, is here with us today as well. So we represent the Gold Star Memorial Committee here in Naperville, and so I don't mean to insult anyone's intelligence, but I'm just going to explain to you what a Gold Star family is. So a Gold Star family is a group of people that have lost a loved one in combat or in overseas while their loved one was in service to our country. So whether that was in wartime, conflict, or peacetime, they are family members, mothers, brothers, sisters, fathers, daughters, children that have lost a loved one while in service to our nation. So why is it important to honor their sacrifice? Because they're the ones that carry the grief. We may attend the funerals of people that are lost overseas, and that's the end of it for us. We remember them. But for those loved ones, they carry that grief for the rest of their life. A lot of times it's their child that dies, the child that they taught to walk, to throw baseball, that they raised and then went overseas and was killed in line of duty in support of their nation's wishes. So it's incredibly important that we support their sacrifice, that we recognize it. In partnership, the Gold Star Committee is working with the Century Walk Foundation in Naperville, as well as the Herschel Woody Williams Foundation. And the Herschel Woody Williams Foundation is actually based out of Tennessee. Woody Williams is a World War II veteran. He was awarded the Medal of Honor for actions at Iwo Jima. He's still alive today. He's 98 years old. He's incredibly active. And with his foundation, they are pushing to build this particular memorial that we are requesting be put in. They've already built 62 across the nation, and this would be the first one in the state of Illinois. So what does the monument entail that we are requesting? Did the binders that we made make it here, Lou? The binders that we made, did they make it here?
Yes, well, the binders, I understand, were sent to all the commissioners and Park District staff that needed to be advised of our plans, the construction plans, and a little bit of the history behind it.
So the monument, if you don't have the picture in front of you, it is a 6-foot tall granite structure. The pad that it would be on is about 25 feet in diameter. And it recognizes it on the front. It has some verbiage recognizing Gold Star family members for their sacrifice. And on the back, the panels are interchangeable in terms of what message and pictures are inscribed there. So that is what the monument entails. That's who we're working with. The location that we're requesting from the Park District is at Veterans Park. Do you know if was the exact location conveyed to them? I know that was just this morning.
We have a picture, Eric, you have the picture of the map? It's on the south side of the park, just above the floodplain, or that sidewalk that is used as a jogging trail and bicycle trail. It would be lower than the current monument, and it would be positioned. There's still some discussion on that. It's not a done deal, but more than likely to be positioned where the cutout of the person saluting would be facing the American flag on the Veterans Memorial.
So that's the desired location is Veterans Park. It obviously goes along with the theme of veterans service, sacrifice to country. The cost associated with this monument from cradle to grave is $97,000. We've already got bids that are projecting us lower than that in terms of construction for the actual monument itself, and then the prep work for the concrete and infrastructure for it. That price also includes lighting, electrical, and landscape and upkeep as well. The vendors that we've gotten quotes from are all Naperville based. They also have a strong veteran connection. So John Kunch with the Beidelman Kunch Funeral Home, his son is our point of contact right now. John Kunch Sr. is actually a Bronze Star recipient. And then, so they're the ones that are quoting us for the granite monument itself. And then we're also working with Ben Drendel of Drendel Concrete. His father served in World War II, landed at Normandy, and then his grandfather served in World War I. They would be doing the foundation for the concrete. And then, of course, as I mentioned, the Woody Williams Foundation. They provide support as well as quality control in terms of the specifications of the monument. This is a set monument. As I mentioned, they've already built 62. They're all across the country. Currently not one in Illinois, and we do hope to be the first. So just a little bit of recap of what we've talked about. The monument, its purpose, obviously, is to recognize Gold Star families and this incredible sacrifice that they've made by giving their loved one in service to our nation. We have our theme. It's obviously recognizing Gold Star families. It fits along with the theme of Veterans Park. We've got the design. We are working on fundraising currently, but we are looking for a location that we can tell our donors to say, hey, this is the monument we're building, and here's what it will be. It's a little bit hard to solicit funds for a monument that we don't know where it's actually going to go. So tonight, our request is that the Park District approve our location requested at Veterans Park in Naperville off Gardner. Would you have anything else to add?
You've received our packets. Are there any questions that you might have arose during the last week that you've had an opportunity to take a look at it?
Yes, first of all, they came to the Parks and Rec committee meeting, and the Parks and Rec committee was favorable of what they were proposing. One of the questions that we had in that committee was the cost. You know, as they mentioned the cost, but they also, just to clarify, your intent is to raise money with private donations.
That's correct.
You're not
Well, through the city, through their SEPA situation, where the tax base that they have raised money for various programs here within the city that weren't used this year because of the COPD.
So they're not looking for the district to
No,
fund
we're not
this?
looking for anything from you as far as any type of financial help except donation of lands.
And the committee also talked about, you know, multiple ideas as far as the location. I think the consensus of the committee was that Veterans Park was fitting both because of the theme of the park and also sort of the path of least resistance. We talked a little bit about the Riverwalk, but it seemed like there'd be a bunch of different hoops to jump through there, and getting them the clarity that they needed to start their fundraising was important. And so again, the committee was favorable, and I certainly am favorable as well.
I have a question directed to both of you. What about the cost of maintenance?
I did ask that of Kevin and Tim, and as I recall, they weren't too concerned about it.
That's the occasional washing of plants, environmental issues and fees.
So it's minor.
Correct.
Okay.
This would also be featured in a Century Watch portfolio as well, since we're working partnership on that.
A little bit about Woody Williams. He is the oldest living recipient of the Medal of Honor. Again, from World War II on the island of Iwo Jima. I had the honor of meeting him this past summer at the Medal of Honor Foundation meeting that they had in Chicago. There were 20 Medal of Honor recipients that came to Chicago. Out of the 79 that are living, 40 are able to travel still because of problems, health problems, and or age, and 20 of them were there that meeting that I had the pleasure of being there. And I sat down with the gunner. I say gunner because that's a Marine Corps term for his rank. He was a Chief Warrant Officer 4. He stayed in the Marine Corps for 30 years. Speaking with him, getting his heartfelt feelings about this monument. We've had 25 young men and one woman from Naperville that lost their lives in the service of our country in time of war. And they're all on the Riverwalk. They're all listed down there, from John Brown, who was killed in the Black Hawk War, up through our current situation now with this war that's way, 20 years is way too long. God forbid that you get another person on there, but if you look at the numbers, 125 people, 250 parents, 500 grandparents, God knows how many brothers, sisters, wives, children, who would this monument would represent. Losing a child is very tough. Last thing I'm going to say is on my second tour of Vietnam, it was in February of 1968. Very pleasant day. It was out of normal for winter. My dad had come home from work and was sitting on our front porch. My mother came out to get him for dinner. And just at that time, Marine Corps staff car pulled into our driveway. The driver and two men in the back seat. And for what must have felt like an eternity, that 15 seconds changed their life. They knew something drastic had happened. After that 15 seconds, thank God for the Breeze family. They pulled out. We were 34 gulf. They went down to 134 gulf and told us about a cop or something. So not only does it touch my family in a very bad way, but it touches our community, our neighbors down the block, you know, the people that our kids grew up with. So, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much. I don't have anything more to say. Jennifer?
No, that's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you for your consideration.
Any further questions?
Besides the Riverwalk, is there any other locations? I mean, I think it's great, Veterans Park, but we don't get a lot of traffic there. If visibility is a goal.
Yeah, those were the two primary locations we talked about in the committee. I think we might have kicked around a third one, Eric, and refresh our memory, but.
Yes, so at the committee meeting, the purpose was also to maybe start looking at locations. We had a chance to talk a little bit more with Lou and actually go out to various sites, and what we noticed is that when we learned more of the background about this monument program, that really best fits at Veterans Park. Especially when you talk about Veterans Day, Memorial Day, and all the veterans gathering and the folks in the community, to have that one central location was really the key. And so that's why we actually met with Lou and staff on the site this morning to further confirm where that location would be. So then that would give Lou and Jennifer the next steps to move forward with this project after discussing it with them this evening, then to bring it to city staff and work in collaboration with the central one.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item we have is recognition of the Park Police 50th anniversary. Tonight, we want to take time to recognize the Naperville Park District Police, who as of 2020 have been serving the community for 50 years. NCTV recently aired a story highlighting the history of the Park Police, and we invite you to watch it now.
The Naperville Park District Police Department is celebrating 50 years. The Park Police started out as a group of just 4, but has now grown to nearly 30 strong.
It was very small. It was a very small operation. So to see where we're at now versus where we were then, it's fantastic. It's a great milestone.
The Park Police were officially formed on April 30th, 1970. They're tasked with maintaining peace within all of Naperville's parks and work in the philosophy of achieving compliance through customer service. William Young was the founder and first chief of the department, signing his oath of office on July 30th of that year. The mayor at that time, George Pradle, works closely with Young. The effects of their work are still felt through the Park Police's leadership today.
Steve giving out his cell number, call me anytime. Mike is the same way. That came from Bill Young and George Pradle. That's where this all started. So when you talk about your roots, when you talk about a culture, you see that there's that partnership, that camaraderie with the community.
Staying connected to the community is a prevalent theme during this time with recent protests. That's why it's been key for the department to work with protest organizers.
We're not really questions about the rally or protest or whatever they're proposing to hold in a park. We get those questions answered, and then we work through it. And typically, we don't have any issues. And the goal going forward is to continue to have that dialogue back and forth with the organizers and facilitate these rallies and protests as long as we need.
Looking ahead, they hope to continue bringing in new officers and developing their current ones. Reporting for Naperville News 17, I'm Aisha Shahausa.
Thank you. So I've asked Chief Steve Schindelbeck, Lieutenant Scott Worley, and Lieutenant Mike Harrington, as well as Dan Young, son of Bill Young, who was the first chief, and former Commissioner Kirsten Young, to join us up here now. To mark this milestone, the Board of Commissioners later tonight will formalize a resolution commending the Park Police for the following: their commitment to customer service, education, and problem solving as they interact with people who are visiting the district's parks and facilities. Secondly, their role in ensuring public safety throughout our large park system, trails, and facilities, and their support of large-scale community events and initiatives such as trail and bicycle safety and Special Olympics Illinois. So congratulations to our Park Police on 50 years of service to the community. We thank you and recognize both past and current officers and chiefs, and look forward to your partnership and service in the community for many years to come. Thank you. Now I'd like to ask this whole cast if they'd like to say a few words.
Thank you for the kind recognition tonight for the Park District Police and their 50th anniversary. I've worked here 30 years, and it seems like those 30 years have flown by, mainly because this is a great place to work. Naperville's a wonderful community, and we have had the support of the citizens and the patrons and the leadership at the Park District for all those years. So I really appreciate that opportunity for all of us. As I said, Naperville is very special, and working in Park District policing has been a journey for a lot of us who have been here over the years. Serving the community in the role of a Park District police officer is a little different than working as a city police officer or in another jurisdiction. We do everything from take care of the missing toilet paper roll for a party rental to dealing with a missing child or somebody injured or in need of mental health services. You never know what you're going to run into when you come to work for the Park District Police on one of your shifts. I'm blessed to have great people to work with, police officers that have retired from other agencies or have started their careers here. And we now have our current leadership with Chief Schindelbeck, who just took over after Chief Schnibben, who relieved Chief Schutz after his retirement, and Chief Ripsky. And it all started with Chief Young, who hired Mike back years ago. Ultimately, I think Dan worked for his dad at one point back in the 80s. There's been a lot of change, but overall, we're still here, and we've adapted to all the challenges of law enforcement in 2020. With that said, I'll turn things over to Mike Harrington, my counterpart, hired a little bit after me.
Thanks, President Riley, for having this recognition. It's a really big deal. I've been here about 29 years now. I started under Chief Young, grew up in Naperville. Bill was actually my dean in high school. I graduated from Naperville Central in 1989 and was hired here in 1991. I'm honored to have the Youngs here. I think anybody that knows us would recognize that Bill was a huge influence in our lives and a huge influence in this department, and we work really every day to try to keep the department in the image that he created of just basic community service and again, so having you guys here is a real important thing. So thank you for being here. So thanks again for having the recognition. So thank you.
Chief, would you like to say a few words? Don't feel any pressure.
Well, the Naperville Park Police actually started because my dad was working at Naperville Central, or back at the time, Naperville High School. And the idea was he knew every high school kid in town, and he knew when they should be home. So he'd go around, make sure everyone got home safe. And then George Pradle, his best friend, used to hang out with him. And I got to say, Carol Pradle and I every once in a while, used to ride with him for our little park checks, stop by Dog and Suds, get a root beer, and then they'd walk us around the park and try to scare the hell out of us. So it's been a great 50 years. It's went from 2 guys riding around their own car to a police department that's professional. They are the face of the Naperville Park District for the majority of the citizens. As they walk around, I remember my dad go do the playground checks, which for many of you, playground checks was make sure all the swings work, make sure the slides work, make sure and say hi to every kid and every mother, every father you see. So they were the face of the Park District, and I think they still are. And that's what people enjoy about the Park Police. They are truly community policing. So, thank you.
Thanks again. Okay, next on our agenda is approval of Ordinance 983, provide for issuance of general obligation limited tax refunding park bonds.
Move to approve Ordinance 983, providing for the issue of not to exceed $6,200,000 general obligation limited tax refund park bonds, Series 2020, for the purpose of refunding certain outstanding obligations of the district, providing for the levy of taxes to pay said bonds, authorization, execution of escrow letter agreement in connection with said refunding, and authorization the sale of said bonds to the purchaser thereof.
We have a second? Motion and second. Sue, do you want to say anything on that?
Sure.
Not that the reading of the motion didn't answer all of our questions.
Right.
That's pretty evident.
A little background. So we first started talking about this process May 14th at the Finance Committee. We then came to the whole board on the 28th to bring up the concept of doing a refunding of 2 of our issues, 2011 A and B, one of which was general obligation bonds, and the 2011 B were actually debt certs that we had issued some time ago. So the proposal or the ordinance before you tonight is to combine those 2 issues into one and issue general obligation bonds in order to save interest. So there's no new money that is going to be generated through this issue. It's strictly an interest saving. Tonight is the parameters ordinance. I know we talked about that a couple times, but just so everyone is clear, this would set parameters for a bond sale that would take place in a public setting. If you recall, we talked about doing private placement versus a public sale. And Eric Anderson, our consultant, who I think may be on, if anyone has any questions, has done some recent analysis and determined that we should save more money by doing a public sale. So that is the plan. We would go through a bond rating. We have tentatively set that aside pending approval of the ordinance tonight for September 3rd. Would be Moody's again would do our rating. We'd be going out for a public sale probably towards the end of September. The ordinance tonight, the parameters ordinance, will allow Eric to receive bids on a certain time and then work with myself or Ray and the president, Mike Riley, to give us the results of that sale. Then we would have the authority to say, yes, do it. And at the following board meeting, then we would be bringing back the results of the bond sale. The actual closing, when we sign on the dotted line, would get funds would be in October.
Any questions? Thank you.
I've got a comment, Mike.
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Egan.
As I said previously, I will not be supporting this. This is another kind of talk out of both sides of our mouth issue. On one side, we're going to refinance and save money to the taxpayers, and we'll pound our chests and champion that, which is all great and stuff. But in reality, it's a tax raise. The burden is being taken off of the operational budgets and is going to be passed along to the taxpayer, and we already overtax them. I have clients within Naperville that are living on Social Security, and they got a whopping 1.6% raise last year. I assume Marie and Mike, you can verify those numbers. I believe you're on Social Security. And yet we're going to raise taxes so that we can fund 3.5%, 4% raises for staff. And these particular clients, one lives with dementia. And between the both of them, they get a whopping $22,000 in Social Security. They then have to, because we've forced little cups of coffee down their throats, have to spend $11,000 a year in property taxes. So this poor family every year has to decide, do I keep my family in my house so that I don't cause further harm with dementia, or do I pay my property taxes? And it's the little pennies like this that add up. We'll see it in the levy. We've got to stop. We're here for the benefit of the taxpayer, not to steal from their pockets. So I'll be voting no. Thank you.
Any other comments? Commissioner McBroom?
Yeah, I've also been hesitant to do anything that would raise the levy on the taxpayer. In our finance meeting discussions, there has been, and Eric answered this question for me at the last meeting when we spoke about this, but if we could issue a tax abatement, that's something that would make me feel more comfortable voting for these general obligation bonds. So while I don't know what that abatement, or if that abatement will take place, I understand that's something that would have to be done next year. But I will be looking for that in the budget, and when the levy is proposed to us, I will be supporting the general obligation issuance tonight, but I will be looking for that tax abatement in the budget discussions.
We did talk about that at the Finance Committee. I didn't highlight it tonight. It was mentioned in the memo. That abatement process is something we would do annually, and we are going to be looking at that in conjunction with the 2021 budget, which we'll talk about a little more in the preview, that focuses not only on this debt, but also on our general levy and 2021 budget.
Any other comments? Bridget, take the roll, please.
Vice President King?
Yes.
Commissioner Carlson? Yes. Commissioner Egan?
No.
Commissioner Janner?
Yes.
Commissioner McBroom?
Yes.
Commissioner Todd?
Yes.
President Riley?
Yes. Okay, next item we have is a monthly treasurer's report.
Move to approve the July 2020 Treasurer's Report.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Bridget, take the roll, please.
Vice President King?
Yes.
Commissioner Carlson? Yes. Commissioner Egan?
No.
Commissioner Janner?
Yes.
Commissioner McBroom?
Yes.
Commissioner Todd?
Yes.
President Riley?
Yes. Next, we have the consent agenda. Bridget, would you read the consent agenda, please?
Item 6.1, approve July 2020 disbursements made through the Bank of America Purchasing Card Program in the amount of $213,257.37. 6.2, approve July 2020 disbursements made through the FinTech electronic payment system in the amount of $4,525.95. 6.3, approve August 13, 2020 regular meeting minutes. And 6.4, approve resolution 20-05, recognition of the 50th anniversary of the Naperville Park Police.
Are there any items to be removed from the consent agenda to be considered separately?
Could we pull item 6.2, please?
All right. Move to accept consent agenda items 6.1, 6.3, and 6.4.
Second.
We have motion and second. Any discussion on this motion? Bridget, call the roll, please.
Vice President King,
Yes.
Commissioner Janner,
Yes.
Commissioner Carlson,
Yes.
Commissioner Egan,
Aye.
Commissioner McBroom,
Yes.
Commissioner Todd,
Yes.
President Riley.
Yes. Next is the motion to approve the consent agenda items.
Move to approve consent agenda items 6.1, 6.3, and 6.4.
Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Okay. And because we are participating physically and remotely, we'll do a roll call vote on this.
Vice President King,
Yes.
Commissioner Janner,
Yes.
Commissioner Carlson,
Yes.
Commissioner Egan,
Aye.
Commissioner McBroom,
Yes.
Commissioner Todd,
Yes.
President Riley.
Yes. Next item is unfinished business.
And this one is move to approve consent agenda item 6.2.
Second? Motion and second. Discussion on this motion.
Hey, Mike,
Yes, Commissioner Egan?
I'll be voting no. This is for purchases of alcohol, saying an inventory should be returned. I don't see anything in our mission where it says we should be pushing booze. We're here for health and welfare.
Commissioner Egan, you've made that point several times before. I think the proper time to have that discussion is when we're making the plans, not when we've already incurred a bill that we're legally obligated to pay. So
It's inventory, Mike. You can return it. Get a refund.
I understand your point, but I think the time to have that discussion is when we're making the plans, not after it has been already incurred and the decision was made to go ahead with it. So, but thank you for your comments.
Yeah, it's a bad decision. I'm voting no against it.
Okay, can we take a roll call vote on this, please?
Vice President King,
Yes.
Commissioner Carlson,
Yes.
Commissioner Egan,
Absolutely not.
Commissioner Janner,
Yes.
Commissioner McBroom,
Yes.
Commissioner Todd,
Yes.
President Riley.
Yes. Next, we have new business and discussion items. First is volunteer resolution.
Yes, at the September 10th meeting, we will be bringing to the board a resolution for your consideration to recognize and commend the volunteers of the Naperville Park District. Each year, we have, on average, over 2,800 volunteers that contribute their time towards various programs, events, and help out in the parks with various maintenance projects. About 81,000 hours each year that is committed by these individuals. In a normal year, we hold a volunteer celebration at Centennial Beach during the summer. And for obvious reasons, this year, we're unable to do that type of gathering and to show the volunteers our appreciation for what they do. This year so far, we've had nearly 1,000 volunteers that have contributed their time. And so as part of the recognition, one of the things we intend to do is bring the resolution to the board to have that approved. As well as within our fall program guide, we're calling out recognition of volunteers there, and we fully intend to bring the celebration back once we can begin to have gatherings. So I wanted to introduce that to the board this evening and see if there were any questions.
Any questions? No. Thanks, Brett. Next is surplus items.
We'll be presenting to the board the recommendation to surplus items from Fleet, Park Police, and the Recreation Department. Those items include an ATV, a rotavator, 10 park officer pedal bikes, a wooden land turtle habitat on wheels, and a telescope. This equipment will be placed for sale on GovDeals website, recycled or traded in.
Any questions?
Hey, Mike,
Yes?
What prevented us from listing these items out so that it could be ready by us before the meeting and or the public?
The cost of them? Is it because they're under?
They were, I believe, included in the, I'm sorry, Bridget?
They should be attached to the agenda item. I'll check and make sure they
They are on the one I printed off.
Yeah, they're here.
On this side, the surplus items are blank unless I'm having a technical issue.
We're checking right now, Commissioner.
Under administrative content?
I'm looking at item 8.2.
Administrative content, unless you didn't log in. If you didn't log in, since this is a discussion item, it's also in the weekly packet.
The surplus element stuff should be listed so somebody shouldn't have to log in. The members of the public can see, and if there's something on that list that they feel that shouldn't be put up for surplus, they should be able to see that and come and talk in the meeting. If it's not listed, the public has nothing, you're forcing them to come sit
It's not being
and hear what's out there. The question is, why can't it be written? It's been written in the past.
This is, Commissioner,
I've not been there.
Commissioner, this is,
It's not the motion, this is just information.
it's just a discussion item at this point.
But the information blank is my point.
I don't get what your problem.
Normally, we have a memo that says, here, we want to bring these blank list of items for whatever the ordinance is that allows us to get rid of surplus stuff. And then there's a list of items.
We get
The
a
items
list of
were not listed,
We have a list of items and there's a motion.
and it's always been brought here.
This is information.
When there is an action item, yes, you're right.
This allows us to make changes and conditions as needed between now and then.
So it gives
Maybe
them
we need a
flexibility
policy
to
that
add
already
extra
be
traffic.
written on the agenda.
Surplus items.
But, well.
Commissioner Regan, your thoughts have been recognized. Thank you. Tim, anything else?
Not for this one. I've got the next one.
Okay. Thanks.
We're ready for the next one?
You got the next.
Next item.
Oh, yes, purchase production mower, I'm sorry.
No problem. We intend to present to the board for consideration the purchase of one 2020 Jacobson HR 700 14-foot production mower. This unit would be at a cost of $77,145. This unit would be to replace a 2013 Toro Groundsmaster 5910 16-foot production mower with over 4,500 hours, and it's at the end of its serviceable life. This mower has become increasingly expensive to maintain and repair. We were looking to replace like with like, but we were able to meet with staff, and after discussion, we agreed that we're able to purchase the smaller and less expensive Jacobson mower, saving approximately $30,000. In addition to the cost of repairs, Parks does not currently have any backup mowers. When they break down, our mowing operations are severely hampered. Additionally, we have not yet purchased any equipment for Wolf's Crossing Community Park, and one thought was that the Toro could be stationed at Wolf Crossing for the remainder of 2020 in the event that we need to take care of any mowing.
Any questions?
Hey, Mike.
Yes.
Kevin used to write these beautiful memos for us that basically encapsulated what I just heard, but again, it's not written and put in here. The memos have a long history. They provide a lot of great information, including the service costs, the number of tickets, and all that great information. I don't understand why we've changed and it's not here tonight. So, I object to this. We need to be able to pre-read stuff and have questions prepared and not be coming off of the fly on a report that's right into the record.
And again, when it's an action item, that detail will be provided. Bridget, did you have
I was just
something?
going to state, our protocol is to, for discussion items, add them to the weekly packet prior to the meeting for discussion, add them to board docs as reference for commissioners to, under
when you have all the final pricing and everything.
That's been our protocol.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thanks. Next, 8.4, mid-year review and 2021 budget preview presentation. Thank you. Great job.
Oh, were you pulling it up?
Yeah.
Ready?
We're not going to be able to see that, Bridget. We're going to have to listen. It's not attached to the agenda, so.
Commissioner, were you trying to say something?
The presentation, I assume that we're about to see, Bridget was trying to line up the screen so that Marie and I could see the larger screen, but, you know, don't want to call out boomer ages versus X ages, but at this distance in my eyes, I'm not going to be able to read that.
I have a copy.
Here.
I'm fine. Yes, you can see it.
Yeah, it's projected. We're good.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, we'll get
Thank
started
you.
then. Okay, so our agenda tonight, we have a theme, as we always do. You'll hear it throughout the presentation. You're going to hear 2020 projected financial results. We did it a little different this year, and you'll even see a different.
Yeah, I ask a question. Commissioner Todd Lee, can you hear Sue Sanders speaking?
She's faint.
I can hear her.
You sound better from the podium. If that makes a difference, I don't know where she's at.
Okay, is that better? I'm at the podium now. Okay, so what you're going to...
Thank you.
Okay, great. So 2020 results, we're typically doing this in the month of September. We moved up that part of the budget process for 2021 so we could get results a little bit earlier of where we think we are going to be at the end of this crazy year. And then just a couple slides on a preview of our 2021 budget.
Okay, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, so obviously this is not shocking to everybody, but the year that we've had collectively, not only as a staff, but certainly as a community and as a country, is like nothing that anybody has ever seen, and nothing that we thought we were going to have to deal with, certainly when we entered 2020. That being said, certainly it's shown that our mission of promoting healthy lives, minds, and a community has never been more important. We've heard that over and over and over again. Through our vast recreational opportunities, we support, and again, I'm not going to read each and every one of these, but it's just a vast variety of things that we do in a normal year. Those have been certainly, I guess, amplified this year, other than the seniors, and although we do have some seniors that are participating in some activities, the vast majority of people, and those of you obviously that are either watching this tonight or listening with kids, understand trying to keep your kids involved, and not only from a physical standpoint, but from a mental health standpoint. So that's been one of the underlying themes this year so far, and I think it'll probably continue throughout the year, about trying to keep people physically active and mentally well. We certainly could not have predicted what we were about to face on March 16th, which I considered and staff considered D-Day. We didn't use March 16th necessarily as the date in the sand that things changed. We were well ahead of the game several weeks when we knew this was coming to make some changes, which you'll see throughout this presentation. Resourceful is an underscore. It should be underscored and bolded
for what staff has been able to accomplish so far for the community. From the major budget cuts which we initiated, as of today, Sue and I still approve any expenditure over $1,000 comes through us. So it's not that we don't trust our directors, it's the control aspect of looking at every dollar that's going out the door. I will give you an example. Several weeks ago, there was a request that came in from North Parks to plant tulips. I've been reduced to the point of, I said, is there a cheaper flower that we can plant? And the response back from Parks North was, that's about as cheap as we can get. So you learn something about flowers. That's the level to which Sue and I are scrutinizing expenditures. The reallocation of staff. And again, I'm not going to steal thunder from the other departments that are going to talk about this, the other directors. But we have people early on working positions in custodians that weren't custodial before. It's just amazing how staff has stepped up to fill the voids because we have a hiring freeze and we're not bringing anybody new in. I stepped into a position for 2 months as the chief of police. Certainly, I'm very familiar with that position. I wasn't expecting, certainly not only the demonstrations, but certainly the riot that we had in Naperville, and being up close and personal with several of the rioters and defending with our park police our buildings. I'm very proud of the park police officers that stood with me and protected our 2 buildings, and certainly stood up to protect, at that point, the library next door to us. We certainly do not plan on hiring and filling any gaps. It's just a chess game, basically, that we play here. When something opens up, likely we're not filling it. In fact, we're not filling it, and we're looking for some unique ways in which to still continue to provide the best service we can without spending money. Additionally, we responded to challenges by developing unique recreational solutions. Staff remained creative and flexible again throughout the pandemic. I added virtual programs. That was a huge endeavor, and that came from Omar Sandoval, Brad Wilson, and our leadership team meeting, which now is every week. We used to have these every 2 weeks. We now meet every week because there's just enough on agendas to go through. You as commissioners took the fight to the governor by suing the state and understanding that this changes weekly. So our fall programming just changed drastically August 15th. Everything was set to go, changed. We anticipate there'll be more changes. We're not asking for sympathy because other districts are going through the same thing. We're just asking for understanding, and certainly the public has been very understanding with us. Some not so understanding, with weeds and some of the things that as a priority level we just can't get to as quickly as we used to. But overall, I think this community has been very supportive of the Park District and our efforts. Certainly with Centennial Beach not able to open, we introduced the midday spray on Rotary Hill. We worked team sports programs to offer modified versions of all kinds of different sports, and took advantage of the warm weather and moved previously indoor programs outside. Some of the major goals, and you're going to hear this again. This starts with you as a board. The board could have basically laid down and said, stop everything, don't do anything, and we'll just save the money and we'll hope for the best next year, but you didn't do that, and we appreciate that. You delivered to the community. The 95th Street Community Plaza development, I've been in this community since 1984. I will maintain this till the day I die, which hopefully is a long time from now, that this will be not nearly ever as big and as wonderful as the Riverwalk, but it'll be a close second. The popularity of this, and from the concerts to the music to just seeing smiles on kids' faces and happiness on parents' faces to have some relief, was a grand slam. That was a grand slam. So a great effort. We as staff appreciate and thank you for allowing us to bring this forward. Wolf's Crossing Park site coming soon next year. We're moving along really, rather well on that. Knock Park redevelopment. Grand opening is scheduled for September 17th. We do have some usages out there now. About 2.5 years ago, when I first started visiting this idea of about not renewing the lease with Riverfest, I was told by several officials, I don't know that anybody necessarily in this room, that I was an idiot and that that's never going to happen. And it happened because it was for the right reasons. It was returning an asset. And I am a big fan of Riverfest, I'm a big fan of Last Fling, but this was an asset that came out of our hands that we could never really do anything with for about a 6 to 8 week period because we turned it over to Riverfest. And so I think the usage of this facility for years to come, not only for the park district, but for the school district, is another example of the great partnerships that we have in this community. And then we supported Naperville Response for our veterans, hosting the inaugural 2-day community event, which turned out to be the fireworks, certainly on July 4th. I think you're going to see more events wanting to migrate south down to the Frontier Park area because of how well this one was received by the public. But again, no bets on that, but just from what I've heard from the community, huge amount of support and loved the location. Developed a plan to address the community indoor space needs and program capacity issues. We're going to push off, obviously, the program or the surveys that we had in place that we hired consultants to bring in. That's going to get pushed off to 2022. Let's be realistic with each other here. The vaccine comes out by the end of the year. That's great. Hope people go and take it. But in reality, I don't see things returning to normal sometime until 2022, whatever that normal is. So I think going out now and surveying a community and doing some business assessments and that, I think is a waste of money at this point. I think we just wait and do that in 2022. And then certainly all the playground renovations that we completed.
Okay, so based on all the work that the department's put together, and really it was a big undertaking at this time that we asked for them to do this. So while they're in the midst of, especially down to the program managers, going through every single line item in their budget as if we were doing this in September, we have a good jump on that. So what we're looking at overall, and this is district-wide, is we are anticipating, again, this can change, a drawdown of reserves of about $900,000. And where would we get that drawdown from? We're anticipating around $480,000 that we'd be taking from general fund reserves and another $417 from capital reserves. As we'll talk about some of the position of our other funds where we have done better than budget in every fund, we think, except for recreation, and that's funds like IMRF and FICA where they're driven by payroll costs and because of reductions in staffing and also reductions because of closures or reductions just in general of staffing of the hiring freeze. In those funds, we also have done better than budget. Those funds are restricted though, so whatever surplus we have in those funds will help us. We'll be rolling those over into next year and we'll be able to reduce the levies in those funds assuming we have a normal year in 2021, which we don't know. When we looked at, once all the detailed numbers were in and we took a step back, I think the message, what we all talked about is our best effort to try and balance a couple things. A drawdown that we know we're going to have to use, but also a balance of supporting our AAA bond rating, which continues to be important and will be, again, as I said, rated on September 3rd, and also positioning us for a very uncertain year in 2021. And we think we're at a good place to achieve that balance if things go as planned, which we're expecting that, like everything else, things will change. Let's see, next slide. So our next slide is just a little drilling down a little bit into, this is district-wide operating results. We're not at the fund level yet. Operating revenues, we anticipate being $6.2 million or 22% below what we budgeted. On the operating expense side, not quite as much, because we do have some fixed costs that happen regardless. We have a 5.3 million or 19% below our budget. Breaking it down to a little bit in categories, and we're going to get into a little more details of these categories next, but wages and benefits throughout the district is our largest expense, over 70%, about 70% of our district budget, operating budget, assuming not capital, is it focuses on wages and benefits. We're expecting that to be 2.3 million under budget. We'll get into a little more details of what comprised that. On the supply side, 425 under budget, and contractual service, a whopping 1.8 million. We would expect to be down in contractual services that much, especially for program services, because we're not obviously able to offer all of the programs that we have. However, we've done our best, as Brad's going to talk about, of actually changing programs, still being able to offer them just in a different way. And utilities are projected to be about 200K under budget. A big piece of utilities, obviously, our water costs to fill the beach, which is around 40 grand a year for us budgeted. I'm going to turn it over to Katie now to talk a little bit more about personnel savings.
Okay. Because, as you mentioned, personnel are our biggest expense, I wanted to break down a little bit of what those savings will look like over the course of 2020. Full-time staff savings, about $278,000, and that's attributed to eliminated and combined positions, the hiring freeze and delays that we've put in place in hiring, the domino effect due to retirements. We've had a lot of retirements this year, more so than in typical years, and overtime savings. You'll see the biggest chunk is in part-time savings. This is contributed to a couple different factors, not just the fact that programs didn't run, so that we saved that expense, but also because our divisions are running extremely lean. A lot of the savings also occurs in parks. So it's straight wages and overtime. In health insurance, we're at $98,000 in savings there. And then as a result of the savings in the other areas related to wages, we're realizing savings in FICA and IMRF. Okay. Some additional impacts of COVID on personnel. As Ray alluded to early on, we really allocated people into different areas. When everything hit around mid-March, we were at a point in time where facilities closed and staff were working in custodial on deep cleaning our 2 golf courses. As that wrapped up, grass started mowing. So we needed to be, it was growing, we needed to mow it. So we moved 3 of our custodians, our full-time custodians, over into parks. They were very well received, and they took on different job duties and whole different schedules too, just to maintain the parks. Customer service, finance, recreation, and HR staff worked in concessions and in the pro shop at both Naperbrook and Springbrook. This delayed the need to hire part-time staff or bring part-time staff back. So that resulted in savings in our part-time wages. While we were accommodating an ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act matter, HR staff also assisted in parks and fleet, and that's on the admin side. We didn't get into vehicles and stuff like that. Some other big changes that have impacted the entire district from a personnel perspective. HR is tracking and monitoring all absences. We are not typically involved in the day-to-day call-offs, but because of COVID-19, our supervisors are in constant contact with us so that we can determine whether or not there are concerns about COVID. If we need to make any sort of notifications, we know when people are being tested, and then that leads into ensuring that they are receiving the appropriate benefits that have been afforded them under the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. And it's a lot different than a lot of our other benefits, because we're not only paying paid time off to individuals that don't typically have any paid time off, we now also have individuals that qualify for FMLA and the FMLA expansion because of changes related directly to that act. And we're noticing the biggest impact right now is we're working with staff who have children home that are learning remotely. We have a handful of individuals that need to be home to oversee those studies. COVID has taken over our lives in HR to the point where we've had to develop training from scratch. It's required, but we had very little guidance to do so, and we were able to accomplish that in-house. And every employee at the district has to go through it, so it's now part of our orientation program as well. We also developed a comprehensive plan to provide comfort to our staff that have worked in facilities that didn't close. Our maintenance facilities were still up and operating, and we wanted those staff to feel comfortable coming to work on a daily basis. And then also to provide comfort for those staff who are returning to work after working from home for an extended period of time. Some of those changes include staggered shifts, the district making homemade face masks like this one available to staff that were actually made by our volunteers that we will be recognizing here in the near future. We had a whole lot of emails. I sent a lot of emails on a daily basis and a weekly basis trying to keep individuals engaged and know what the expectations were when they did report back to work. We have a comprehensive signage program to remind staff and patrons as well as far as our expectations go when they are in our facilities. And then we instituted building protocols to address anything and everything else we could think of that would provide comfort to our staff. We have limited the amount of high touch point areas. As I stand here and I'm touching the podium and realize, a bunch of other people just did this, so everybody after me, don't do it. We also have closed areas that have been gathering areas like lunchrooms. We've removed the chairs and tables from those locations, and we've reduced non-employee traffic into our facilities that aren't doing day-to-day basis, largely the RCC and the admin building. Thank you.
Okay, back to numbers. So, real quick, we talk a lot by fund. So when we go through the budget, you hear general fund, rec fund. We don't really always talk about, as I presented earlier, total operating revenues and expenses. So we thought it would be helpful to share some information on the general fund, which we'll recall houses all of our most of the administrative functions at the district, finance, HR, IT, the board's budget, Ray's administrative budget. Non-producing revenue flows through the general fund. It's, almost 100% supported by property taxes in this fund. So where we think we're going to be at the end of the year is $159,000 above the $7.2 million budget. And the reason for that is just for ease for our projections, we've allocated and we are submitting a reimbursement through the CARES Act through DuPage and Will County to begin with. So we're anticipating getting reimbursed for some of our COVID expenses, hopefully. We're working through that now, so that reimbursement is running through the general fund. From an operating expense perspective, we are expecting to be around $400,000 or 7.2 below budget, and that is a combination of each department going through and just scrubbing all their expenses, a lot of which we identified early on, if you remember, when we did COVID reductions back in, I think it was early April, what we presented to you. So the surplus that we are anticipating before any transfers out is an additional $535,000. So $500K in a better position than we had expected when we put the budget together based on that reimbursement and then a reduction of expenses. If you recall in the budget, normally we transfer a large amount to the rec fund to make that fund zero. And that was planned to be about $1.6 million in the 2020 budget, and we planned on sending about $400,000 over to capital if that money were available. So to make the rec fund whole, and I'm going to get into the rec fund results because that's really where you're going to see the large deficits, we'll be transferring $2 million, and I consider that a $2 million expected budget transfer. We're going to take the $535 surplus from the savings in the general fund, and then, as I mentioned earlier, bringing down reserves about $480,000 on an estimated basis, and projecting our ending fund balance at about $3.8 million still in the general fund, which will support our AAA bond rating. Okay, rec fund. So here's where obviously we would expect to see large deficits, and that's what we're going to see. From an operating perspective, we are 6.1 or 45% below our revenue budget. That's huge. could never anticipate a year where we would end up in this position. But it's becoming almost more normal as we get through the year of jockeying things around. From an operating, obviously, we can't just look at revenues, especially in that fund, because a lot of our expenses are related to revenue generation. So we're below about 4.3 million, or close to 29% below operating expenses. Again, just like to highlight, that's a combination of not only we saved on expenses because we weren't running programs, but we also have worked to try and reduce expenses in this fund, particularly Parks Department is across the board for all our divisions an example, and even in recreation when we are putting on programs, trying to do that in the most cost-effective manner with the least amount of staffing that Brad will talk about a little bit later. So when we put the 2020 budget together, we projected a $1.6 million drawdown or deficit, and 1.6 was going to come for the general fund, and we would end at zero. We're projecting that deficit to be 3.4 million, so that's an additional 1.8 million that we hadn't anticipated in the 2020 budget that we are going to be working through to fund at the end of this year. And where does the 1.8 million come from? As I just mentioned, a total of 3 million is going to come from the general fund. And then an additional 417 is going to come from reserves in our capital fund. This won't be exact. I'm saying this will happen. These are all projections based on what happens at the end of the year. These numbers will change a little bit, but we gave a real detailed look, and if the rules stay the same, we're pretty confident that our projections are in a good place. So with that, if there aren't any questions on the numbers, I'm going to turn it over to Brad for some commentary.
So as we entered 2020, we were in a very strong position when it came to program registrations and revenue, facility operations the same. In fact, winter 2020 program registration was exceeding 2019, what we saw then. Starting in March, that's when you began to see programs begin to be canceled. Most of our spring programs were canceled. Facilities had to be closed. And since that time, we have really had to update and change nearly every program that we offer through the district and nearly every facility operation due to COVID. You may recall in April, I shared with the board a number of responsibilities that our staff had to take on in light of the pandemic and the changes that were taking place so quickly, much of which fell on our full-time staff. We rely very heavily upon part-time staff to assist with our program administration with our programs. In fact, we typically employ 22 recreation coordinators, part-time recreation coordinators that help with various programs. Right now, we have a fraction of those coordinators assisting staff. Full-time staff have had to take on additional responsibilities, and the overall intensity that we saw in April when everything was closing, shutting down, and so on, has continued throughout the course of the summer with all the different changes that we've had to make with programs. Lesson plans have had to be updated, guidelines have had to be updated, and then re-updated as new information comes out. That continues even with the most recent all sports policy that was released at the end of July. It went into effect in the middle of August. An entirely new program area that did not exist with the Park District prior to April, virtual programs. And since that time, we've offered nearly 200 virtual program offerings. We've had well over 1,000 participants within those classes, but that has also put a strain on our staff. It's not as simple as just putting that virtual program out there and then letting it run on its own. All of our live sessions have to include not only the instructor, but a member of our full-time staff to actually monitor and be part of that live session to control what's going on so that the instructor can really participate and teach the class. Our virtual program offerings, I mentioned about 1,200 participants so far and about $42,000 in revenue. That's a program area that we see continuing for the foreseeable future, not only with the esports that we offer, but our fitness classes, dance classes on down the line. Participation in our summer camps was at 30% of what we saw in 2019. Certainly the families that took advantage of the summer camps we had available needed to have that offering for their kids in many cases because that is something that their kids were able to do during the course of the summer while the parents went to work. So we were at about 30% there. Our overall summer program revenue, as it stands today, which also includes our fall soccer, which I'll talk about in a minute, is at about 43% of what we saw in 2019. Many of our free summer events, we continued with those with social distancing guidelines in place for our concert series, for our children's lunch hour entertainment, a night at the movies. Those programs out in the parks actually saw very similar participation to what we've seen in prior years. People in the community were looking for things to be able to do and to do in a safe manner, and we've gotten and continue to receive a number of compliments with regards to continuing those programs. Despite opening in June, which is about a month late for our paddleboat, kayak, and paddleboard rental operations, we are actually tracking ahead of 2019. That has also been a very popular destination where we're 12% ahead of revenue right now for the year compared to last year. Again, families are looking for those activities that they can do outdoors, and that has been one that they've really picked up on. And I mentioned before just the different modifications that have been made to many of our programs. That continues with our fall. We just wrapped up working with Sam and her team and putting the fall program guide together. That's going to be released this week with registration starting next week. The majority of those programs, again, all have had to be modified, with our largest ones being the Naperville Youth Soccer Program, transitioning that from a league program where competitive games are being played to a scrimmage program to fall underneath the guidelines issued by the state, as well as our flag football program. In addition, we're also offering for the first time a fall baseball, t-ball, coach pitch, and softball program, something the district has not done before, but because those are lower risk activities, we can do that this year. With the Fort Hill Activity Center, our main facility within recreation, on March 1st of this year, we actually had the highest number of fitness members that the facility had seen since opening in August 2016. We had over 6,700 fitness members at that time. The facility closed on March 17th, and we were able to reopen under Phase 4 starting on June 26th. As of August 20th, the total number of memberships is down 485 or 13% at this point. Those are the memberships where individuals have just canceled their membership altogether. Of the remaining memberships, we have 43% that have chosen to freeze their memberships, so they want to continue to have that membership, but they're not going to use the facility, so they've frozen it, and then we do not charge them until the freeze is over and they return to the facility. And about 57% have remained active. So that means that they continue to pay those monthly membership fees to be part of the fitness program and to be able to utilize the services that we have available. We have over 3,100 additional fitness members that are in our Silver Sneakers, our Prime, and Renew active programs. Those are programs primarily geared towards seniors that we receive revenue from for each visit or each scan that takes place. So we need individuals to come to the facility in order to make the revenue off of those memberships. We have seen with the senior population, with that being a high-risk area, that not many seniors are coming back to the facility at this point, but we do anticipate in the future that once things begin to loosen up, we will start to see those individuals coming back to the facility. In July, Fort Hill averaged about 37% of the visits that we experienced for the same time frame in July in 2019. To date, in August, we're at 38% of what we typically see. We do know that one of our neighboring communities, when asked about their fitness memberships right now, they're between the 20 to 25% mark as far as what they've seen with their fitness members returning to the facility. And as of right now, our year-end estimates for the Fort Hill Activity Center still has the facility with a budgeted surplus, and that's something that we'll continue to strive for.
Parks and Fleet overview. Major additions to the park system this year include the 95th Street Community Plaza, the Knock Park synthetic turf field, and the forthcoming Wolf Park Community Plaza, Wolf Crossing Community Park. The 95th Street Community Plaza opened early this summer and exceeded everybody's expectations and has proven to be a great success. The synthetic field at Knock Park just opened for use this week, and we're excitedly anticipating substantial completion at Wolf's Crossing later this fall. Non-program park amenities serving as an outlet for the community and are as busy as ever. Our trail systems are overflowing with users. Groups are queuing up to use basketball, pickleball, and tennis courts. Disc golf at Knock Knolls continues to draw from all over the area. I drive by Commissioners Park outside of work hours, and the volleyball pits and inline hockey rink have games running all evening long. In addition, the amounts of trash collected and replenishment of custodial supplies also serve as an indicator of the popularity and required maintenance of those areas. Doing more with less. As Katie referenced earlier, North and South Parks each have Specialist 1 openings due to retirements and upward movement within the department. An additional South Specialist 1 position allocated with the construction of Wolf's Crossing has been deferred until further notice. North's opening has remained vacant since early May, and both South positions since the end of July. When the pandemic hit in March, it was just before the return of 6-month employees and summer seasonals. Many of those positions were and have remained frozen. Operations and capital allowance accounts were shifted, resulting in a refocus of priorities. Over $100,000 from operations and over $140,000 in park allowances were eliminated or deferred. In some cases, there was a direct correlation to budget reductions. For example, with the cancellation of spring sports, the need to purchase athletic field supplies was drastically decreased. In other instances, tough decisions were made, such as to eliminate the installation of new plant material, skip this year's purchase and installation of mulch, and reduce applications of herbicides and fertilizers. Over 40% of our 2020 fleet capital purchases were removed from this year's budget. Not only will that have the domino effect of delaying the replacement of vehicles and equipment in upcoming years, but also expect to see annual repair costs increase due to an aging fleet. The reductions in labor have affected service levels and standards. We're doing our best to focus on core services, enhanced cleaning procedures, and our new park areas and features. With fewer hands, staff is constantly having to reprioritize tasks and put out fires. Focusing on core services, including mowing, garbage and litter, custodial services, program support, inspections, and safety-related items will continue. However, the time intervals between these activities may see an increase. Park appearances are beginning to suffer. Trim mowing might be skipped in areas for a week, landscaped areas might not be mulched, dead trees and plant material are not being replaced, ponds are beginning to look a little bit hairier, and weeds are filling in and growing a little bit taller before we're able to tend to them. These are all out of the norm sort of changes that you're starting to see within our park system. With the extra time being spent on COVID-related cleaning procedures and required to maintain several new park areas, both internal and external expectations may need to be reset. Continue to support recent initiatives like Sustainable Parks, Natural Area Management Plan, Park Meadow, Shoreline Stabilization. The above listed initiatives were all needed in the parks and valuable additions to our maintenance program. However, successful completion requires constant attention that staff is struggling to find time for. With a hardworking staff, our Parks Department will continue to battle and work through these challenges. Thank you.
In terms of what we've been doing on the park police front, we had to increase the patrols dating back to March in the face of the parks and a number of our facilities being closed. And then we had to keep those patrols in place as we tried to manage some of the parks that at times found themselves overcrowded. We, in addition to patrolling the parks and facilities, we've worked with the city police to provide frontline support during protests and rallies. And that continues to pay dividends even into this week, with events planned tomorrow and for the foreseeable future. This partnership has been especially important this year as we manage these events and make sure that they don't turn violent. Overall, though, our labor costs are projected to come in under budget based on the Centennial Beach being closed, the lack of athletic tournaments that would normally take place, and the cancellation of a number of special events.
Good evening. Happy to provide some marketing highlights tonight. As several of the other directors have alluded to the fact that change is a constant and flexibility has really been the key when it comes to 2020 and moving forward with everything COVID related and just normal operations, which I guess it's been anything but normal this year. We've had a big emphasis, not surprising, on communications, while establishing COVID-related communications for the benefit of the community. That's involved the creation of a COVID webpage, which was launched right when this all started back in March and continues to be updated as things change, which again, change is a constant. The creation of a lot of different communications, whether that's via email, social media, our webpage, whatever the case is, to alert people of changes, whether it's event cancellations, changes in programs. That's really been a big focus of ours as far as getting the information out there to the community. Brad had mentioned the program guide, and it's been kind of an interesting experiment this year. As you know, we produce the program guide 4 times during the year, and spring went off without a hitch. We got it out there. Summer, kind of things came to a grinding halt as we found that we needed to change things again and again and again. In fact, we ended up having 3 versions of the summer program guide. So we learned a little bit from that lesson and determined that instead of having an 8 to 10 week window with which to develop the program guide, it made a lot more sense to suspend the printing and delivery of a publication that was obviously going to continue to change, and really put that time and effort in providing flexibility to staff. Flexibility for the recreation department to pivot and shift when they needed to in working on their programs, and also flexibility from a marketing perspective in putting together the publication the best of our abilities with the most correct information we had available. What that's led to is us suspending the program guide printing and delivery throughout the rest of this year, which not printing and delivering summer, autumn, and then winter. That's going to save the district about $189,000. And certainly we're looking into the future, into 2021. What does that mean from a program guide perspective? Do we continue to suspend it? We're going to see what happens, but that's certainly something that we're looking at. And then finally, not surprising, the marketing department is always working very closely with the recreation department in supporting their initiatives. And this was no different with the launch of the virtual programs, the esports initiative, a lot of other things, the shifting of priorities, the changing of information with regard to COVID, and just working on developing new marketing for those new programs. And that will continue. Thank you.
Shifting on to golf. Golf this year has been kind of a tale of 2 seasons as we've been navigating through the various restrictions and different guidances we've had during this pandemic. We opened up as usual in early March, and business was as usual for a couple of weeks until March 21st, when the governor's executive order closing down the golf courses occurred. For 6 weeks, we basically were closed down, much like every other business in the state, until about May 1st. And May 1st, we went into phase 2. Phase 2 allowed us some golf under some severe restrictions, twosomes only, with a 15-minute interval. And if you do the math, that basically adds up to about 8 golfers an hour, compared to about 24 golfers an hour, which is what we're doing right now. We had limited carts. Carts were only allowed for golfers who had issues that would not allow them to walk while they played. And food service was limited to the walk-up window, no seating at all on our patios or in the clubhouses. And all our practice areas were closed down. We had no driving range available. Moving forward to May 29th, the Phase 3 guidance came out, and that's when things significantly changed for golf. Foursomes were permitted again. Our driving ranges were opened. We changed our interval down to 10 minutes from 15 minutes. And our food and beverage operations, we were allowed seating again. We were allowed seating out on our patios outside. And single rider carts were available. Any golfer could use a cart again, with the limits being one person per cart. And then moving forward, in June 26, our Phase 4 guidance basically allowed us indoor seating once again. So what's that mean? I mean, once we got into Phase 3 and Phase 4, we saw a dramatic increase. Oh. We went into a dramatic increase in how our golf revenues were. March through May, we basically were seeing very little golf at all. Our rounds were down about 5,000 compared to 2019. Concessions were down 19%. Range was down 34%. And overall, we were down about $250,000 compared to 2019. Once we got into June and July, Phase 3 and Phase 4, and golf started significantly kicking off, our rounds were up 22% versus last year. It was a change of almost 5,000 rounds. Our range revenue jumped. Last year, and actually the years prior, we've had significant increases in our range revenue. Our range revenue in June and July jumped another 34%. Concessions were up 19%. Golfers were not only just coming out and playing, they were sticking around. Our food and beverage operation had a real nice jump, and it was not just the patio areas. People were buying out on the golf courses and enjoying sitting out inside the clubhouses. And overall, our revenue saw a 21% increase, nearly a $250,000 increase versus our same numbers during the same period last year. Total revenues through July 31st were down compared to last year, but obviously being closed for 6 weeks and under significant restrictions in May, seeing us within $150,000 looked like a good thing. On the expense side, we had to make significant changes in the spring. We were looking at creative ways to reduce our expenses, and obviously the labor is our biggest expense, and that's where we concentrated. Our pro shop part-time labor was cut. We furloughed any staff that was on, and we did not hire any staff until May. All part-time labor during the 6 weeks course shutdown was off. On the maintenance side, we were reduced to our full-time staff and our ACA employees. The minimal part-time golf staff came on in May, but the key to our operations during that period, especially when we were going through those significant restrictions, was the help we got from other parts of the district. The customer service team, HR, the finance team, all assisted on our golf operations in the pro shop, working the counters in the pro shop, in the concessions. And this was a tremendous work that we saw completed in a short period of time, as all these new staff members and the golf staff professionals and managers were able to get everybody up to speed and understand our operations, our point of sale systems, and our customers. And it all worked seamlessly. Overall, the golf operations were able to save 37% through May 31st, helping our bottom line as we move forward. So what's it all mean, at least going forward for our projections? We're looking at being within 5% of our budget overall with revenues. It's a number that If you asked me in April or May, I couldn't predict that. But once we started into phase 3 and phase 4, it was a reality that golf was coming back. On the expenditure side, we saved almost $250,000, just over $250,000, mainly in that labor reductions, but in supplies, contract labor, other things. The bottom line is we're forecasting a surplus of almost 7 figures this year that will be transferring back to capital. Obviously, there's things that we can't control if the weather changes dramatically, or obviously if we get rolled back a phase or two, more restrictions, different guidance, that could all impact our operations. But we're confident, at least where we are right now with the way revenue is and our expenses, that we should be pretty close to that number.
One thing before we jump into capital, you go ahead, Jeff. I was recently at the retirement party for my former boss from Bolingbrook, and we were talking, it was held at the Bolingbrook Golf Club. And a common theme that Bolingbrook is seeing is the same thing that we are seeing, which I think is going to be great for the game of golf, is it's created new players. From the age of 5, 6, 7 years of age to 70s and 80s. People that, you know, we traditionally think played golf, never picked a club up, but now have picked a club up. And it's a common theme that you're seeing throughout the golf courses, which is something that'll be great, because this is going to go away. It's not going to be COVID forever. I know that it's hard to believe. We still have that mindset that we don't know when that day is going to be, but that day is going to come. And yet, what'll be great is that Springbrook and Naperville, through, you know, and with the assistance of Samara and her team, have created an atmosphere. And let's be honest, also, the fact that we're in this has created the atmosphere for people to want to get out and try new things. But it's one thing to go out and try it, it's another thing to hold on to them. And we're seeing repeat customers coming back and holding on to those customers and enjoying that game. So I think we have set ourselves up very well, you know, for the future of golf.
Ray, if I could add on to that real quickly, it's one thing that we have definitely noticed this year is the new people coming out to play golf. People that we haven't seen before, customers from all over the Chicago area, all the different demographics, ages, and you know, some of the things that we can track, such as our database, the total number of customers. Our database this year has increased just over 20%. Those are new customers coming in, the first time they have signed up to play at our golf courses. And those people are now, we can market to them, we can reach out to them, and hopefully make them a repeat customer. So it's been a benefit for what we've gone through this year, and we hope to build on it for the future.
All right, so as identified below or above, the 2020 capital projects consisted of total package A and B projects, IT capital, allowances, and debt service. So right now we're projecting in total $3.7 million under the budget amount that we set at the beginning of the year for 2020 capital improvement projects. When the pandemic hit, we not only looked at the operating budget, we also looked at capital. And when we looked at those capital budgets and projects within them, we found that there were several projects we could shift out. They were aligned with grants with the state of Illinois. Some of those dollars were linked to casino funds. So there's a lot of improvements that we identified when we first discussed this when the pandemic hit to shift out some projects. We also realized this is a very competitive bidding market. We brought in a lot of projects on our budget, so that's what led to the $3.7 million. But it's very important to mention there's over $15 million that we're in the process to implementing within the Naperville Park District this year. So right there, that bottom caption, we kept our commitment to the community to deliver what we promised with capital project implementation. With that $15 million, we know the large-scale projects of Wolf's Crossing Community Park, 95th Street Community Plaza, and Knock Park improvements. So all these projects together, plus we're looking at operations and maintenance, taking care of what we have. We have numerous projects that we're working on this year for implementation, but despite the pandemic, we're still moving forward at a very good pace.
Okay, so this slide here, you know, as we talk about, and everybody in this room, and your friends and your family, have experienced, obviously, stress with COVID. And an example of this is a very close friend of mine owns 8 psychiatric type facilities in the Naperville area. Got one down in Bloomington as well. And I had a conversation with him about a month ago. And it wasn't a conversation, personal conversation, like I was wigging out. It was a conversation over coffee. And it was very interesting, that something that stuck with me is he said, I have about 200 or so therapists. And I've been required to bring in therapists for the therapists. Just let that sink in for a second. That the people that are delivering the services to those that are feeling suicidal, those that are feeling desperate, anxious, are needing assistance for themselves. And so I never put our staff in that situation that, you know, we are not frontline firemen, nurses, doctors. We're not that. Police officers that are on the front lines fighting this battle in many different versions. But we are fighting this battle of constant change, but also delivering the services that we can possibly, the best we can, to this community. And that, with that comes stress. We are seeing, I am seeing, Katie is seeing some concerns within our own staffing levels of the burnout. And we are addressing that, and there's nothing that you need to do about that, but that is here. And what really hit me was interesting. I consider myself battle tested. There's not pretty much anything that's really gonna wig me out. And that stands today. And I don't say that's not a macho statement, that's just who I am. But I had a dinner with a fellow Cook County officer about a month ago. And this officer and I were involved in a shooting where we shot and killed a bank robber back in the early 80s. And we started talking about that. And he said, you know, what's going on, like, you know, with the job you got now? You know, I mean, how stressful can that be? And I said to him, I said, you know, the day in which we had that incident, was very stressful. But over time, that stress went away because you reconciled that stress. Bad guy with a gun, good guy with a gun, good guy shoots better than the bad guy. I'm here, that person's not. And it goes away. This stress for staff is continuous, day in, day out, from the time they arrive till the time they leave. And so we try our best to deal with that. But I just wanted you guys to understand that while Park and Rec seems like, oh, it's just Park and Recs, and my God, how can you be stressed out about anything? You know, Mike, you work in a big business. I'm sure you see this. Those of you, you know, Bill, you own your own business. I'm sure you see the same stressors. You know, Bobby, all of you here, Rich, you for sure, obviously with the, you know, the organization that you run. So we remain professional, and we remain dedicated to delivering what we possibly can to the community, because this community is a community of high expectations. Plain and simple. You've seen the emails. Why aren't you pulling the weeds? Why aren't you this? Well, because we don't have enough hands to pull the weeds. We'll get to them the best we can. We have a priority level here. We're an outlet certainly to the community, and continue, you know, to you know, try to have the best impact we can with them. Talked about the high expectations, and just the pressure to adjust on a continuous basis, and that's not going to change. That's going to be for the rest of this year. We anticipate that at some point in time we may get rolled back from phase 4 to phase 3. We already have a book ready to go on that. We've been there, we've done that. I hope that's not the case. We're already feeling that in Will County. So it wouldn't surprise me if the numbers go up and we are notified in DuPage that we'll be following will. I hope that's, again, not the case. And certainly, the bottom line is, as you look ahead to 2021, as I said in the beginning about 45 minutes ago, nobody anticipated this. Nobody figured that we were going to go through a pandemic this year. But we are crucial to this community when it comes to not only the physical aspects, but the mental health aspects. Certainly DuPage County just came out with statistics now that suicides are up 60% overall. And those are the ones, again, we don't hear about those. That doesn't even take into account the attempts, and we don't even talk about kids. So again, it sounds gloom and doom. It's horrible. The upside of this is that you've got the men and women seated here today and those that are at home that come to this job every single day and give their best to the community, and we will continue to do that.
Okay, so now we're into the typical let's look at next year. So up here, we'll just start with what we're thinking for our budget calendar. Tonight, we're doing our presentation to you. In September, we'll be meeting first at the Finance Committee to do some initial reviewing of some larger budget assumptions and levy. And I will just mention right here as we look at that calendar and what we're looking for our tax levies, we are going to be looking at different options in conjunction with service levels and in conjunction with supporting our AAA bond rating to try and put a package together to present to you that would hold taxes flat, holding the line on that. We don't know what that looks like yet till we get into 2021, but we're envisioning, as we had possibly talked about earlier with the abatement of the bonds, of looking at the abatement process as the way to manage through the timeline of the tax levy and then into 2021. If you recall, a tax levy needs to be approved in December. And then any kind of abatement would have to be done by the end of February. So we'll be drafting those options and as soon as we can, get some options to you regarding that. Other than that, we're going to try and stay on the same budget cycle as we have, assuming things don't blow up right at the 11th hour. We always do have flexibility that we have to approve our tax levy in December, but our budget and appropriation ordinance can be approved into the first quarter of 2021. Having said that, though, we'd be looking at getting you a draft budget in the timeline of October 30th, November 6th. This will happen, our tax levy resolution on November 12th. And we are now Bridget will be doing a poll, or I think she has ready to lock in to see if everyone can make the 17th for our workshop with approval at our regular meeting on December 10th. So that's kind of where we are. We've got to jump on it with our projections already being done, but we're all anxiously looking forward to trying to figure out what's going to happen next year.
Okay, questions?
Oh, you want to go through, we've got...
That's just really quick, the proposed district goals. Opening Wolf's Crossing Community Park officially, the strategic plan. Capra is back. We don't know what that's going to look like. Katie is one of the accreditors, assessors. What's your title officially?
Yeah, well, visitor or reviewer. And I was actually assigned to 3 different agencies this year, and all 3 have deferred to next year, so who knows what it's going to look like.
Yeah, we don't know what that's going to look like. And then some of the key renovations and some of these areas you're already familiar with. Again, our flexibility to address the changing COVID environment, evaluation of the service levels, minimum wage and wage compression, which we're feeling, broad assumptions regarding direct programs, virtual programs, we're obviously going to continue, and anticipating changes within the quarterly program guide. And then finally, as I said, we're needed now more than ever. Certainly for our community for many reasons, and I think you would understand and I think support, because I've heard from many of you on different things in the community about why can't we do this or we should do this. keep those coming. I mean, at the end of the day, we are trying to push out as much as we can while staying compliant with currently Phase 4 for our community.
That concludes our presentation.
Now are there any questions?
Now,
To this tax abatement that we would do in February. So we'll be voting on the budget and the levy in December, but this abatement is something that would happen.
the abatement can happen anytime we have, after you approve the levy, we have until the end of February that it has to be filed with the county. So it doesn't have to be done in February. We have until February, the end of February, that needs to be, we're abating anything approved by the board and filed at the county.
And that abatement, was that a separate vote, or is that going to be?
It is a separate vote.
Could that coincide timing-wise with our vote on the budget, or?
We're going to look at all those options. The nice thing about if we waited a little bit is we could maybe, we'll see how it goes, but we could have more information potentially of final numbers. But there isn't anything in mind that I'm aware of unless there's a legal reason why you wouldn't do everything combined. We'll look at those options and see what we can do.
You know, to Sue's point, we're not purposely beating around the bush here. If I was a betting person, I would bet that we're going to come with a recommendation to abate. Hold the taxes, don't charge the citizens of Naperville, increase their taxes at all. In fact, they may even go down some, depending on some of the other things that come in. For a year, I still think we should take advantage of the capital aspect to make sure that we don't lose that. But certainly to the taxpayer, hold the line for them. That's going to come with some pain, but that's why we're in the positions we are, is to try to mitigate that the best way we can.
Yeah, I think I applaud you on the prudent approach that you guys are taking about that. Make sure you have the budget in place and then figure out if abatement is an option for it. So, great approach. Also want to say thank you. I know you've said this many times, President Riley, and right to the staff too. You guys do an awesome job. I mean, this year is hard for everybody. And for you guys to go, you know, the cuts you made, the pivots that you made for virtual, classes, all the efforts and outreach for the community, you guys have done a tremendous job. So thank you, and I feel very proud to be on this board as part of the Park District. Because of you guys, not because of me. It's okay, enough. I'll be quiet. But thank you very much.
Okay. The next scheduled meeting is a regular meeting of the Board of Park Commissioners, September 10th, 2020, 7 p.m. here. In the multi-purpose room. Commissioner Egan, yes?
Yeah, I just had a couple comments regarding the budget. When you bring out the final or the preliminary kind of detail work, I'd like to see the average cost, total cost of ownership for an employee. If I have to do the work myself again this year, pull those same numbers for me, please. I voted no for the survey because I think it was, a Groundhog's Day. We keep getting back the same information, but the board voted for it, so be it. And I don't see a better time than to get the information from the folks. They're sitting at home. They have the ability and the focus now. So I don't think there's a better time to get better feedback from the people about what they want. So I think that should be in the budget, and we should be picking that up again. The last survey, if memory serves, we couldn't get enough response, so they had to fill in the blanks, if you will, on best guesses. And then finally, I appreciate your comments around the pain rate, but especially at this budget, I don't see why we would have a raised pool greater than what our seniors are getting from Social Security. So put that pool at 1.6%, divvy it out however you want, but from my 2 cents, I don't see it being any higher than 1.5% this year. Thank you.
Okay. So again,
Can we go back to some clarification? Commissioner Egan, to your first point, what was it that you wanted calculated again?
The total cost of an employee, I think last year you guys pulled the numbers, I had to do the math, I came up with $96,000 or $98,000 per head.
So you,
And that's something Kate.
So you've got another year of compounding of raises and stuff in there.
You're clear on what's
You know,
being
You're probably pushing 100, 101 if I had to guess, but, I'd like to track that and plot it.
okay, duly noted. Okay, next regular meeting of the Board of Park Commissioners, September 10th, 2020, 7 o'clock here in this room. We do not have any executive session tonight. Before I entertain a motion to adjourn, again, I'd just like to thank Bridget and Omar for the way they put this room together. This is a challenge. This room was not built to conduct meetings in like this, but they've done a very good job. So again, thank you. And now, is there a motion to adjourn?
Well, heck yeah, there is. Move to adjourn the August 27th, 2020 regular meeting.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you all.